Rehashers, back with the Rehash The Past Podcast, and we have a very special guest today with us, Brian Hofmeister. And for the viewers back home, this gentleman means an awful lot to me. I stumbled upon him in the year 1992/93. So that puts us back about 28 years ago. And this man has been an incredible influence on my life. He entered my life at a time of transition, I suppose. At the time, I was bumbling about with my friends and getting hyped up on Public Enemy and Ice-T and other various musical wonders. And then I stumbled upon, I think, a cassette by The Cure, Disintegration, and then Red Hot Chili Peppers, Mother's Milk, which kind of primed me for meeting this gentleman, who then just blew my mind entirely with art, with culture, with hair, with dance. Yeah, an amazing time we have shared together back then in high school in Illinois. When you refer back to your Illinois days, Brian, what do you tell people when you're out in Vietnam? Do you tell them, yeah, I'm from Tinley Park, Illinois? Or do you say outside of Chicago? How do you do that?
Well, I mean, I lived in the city of Chicago, like from about age 21 on, so for a long time. So I usually tell people I'm from Chicago, but I grew up in the suburbs. Because I lived in basically, I was in Tinley Park with you, like only for 2 years. And then I went back to Chicago basically. Like I grew up equal parts in Burbank, Illinois, and Tinley, but I think our overlap was very specific. Because prior to when we met, had you lived somewhere else before Tinley Park, or were you there for a while before that?
Before Tinley Park, I lived in Old Tinley Park.
Oh, okay.
And before that, Country Club Hills.
So
that is.
How many years did you go to Andrew?
I went to Andrew for 3 years, freshman, sophomore, and junior. Yeah.
Yeah. So I only went junior and senior year, and my junior year was your senior year, right? No, I mean my junior year was your sophomore year.
Correct. And that's funny, Brian. I had no idea that you had not been there prior to my sophomore year.
Yeah.
Oh.
I grew up in Tinley from like birth to 4th grade, and I moved to Burbank, and I moved back to Tinley my junior year of high school. So, so we wouldn't, I was only in Tinley for my last 2 years of high school. And it was a big culture shock for me because when I lived in Burbank, my best friend group, we were all like just nerdy skateboard people, and we all happened to be straight edge. Like we didn't do any drugs or drink at all. We were just really kind of nerdy, and most of us were kind of smart, and then eventually some of them started to drink and stuff. But when I moved to Andrew, I ended up being friends with not the skater groups. Almost all the skaters and kind of alt people I met were dickheads.
That's right. Isn't that odd? I always reflect on that too and think, why were the skaters such dickheads?
Yeah. I mean, the people who were nicest to me were the big jocks. I mean, obviously there were a lot of jocks who were jerks to me.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of nice people who were just normal preppy people, and they were just kind, which in Burbank, there were no jocks who were nice. They were all assholes. So it was a weird thing because when I got to Andrew, I thought, oh, there's all these interesting skaters here and stuff. I'm I'm going to be friends with them. And they were such assholes. It was very strange. And a lot of them were heavy into drugs and really out there. So I don't know. To answer your original question, well, to be totally honest, here in Vietnam, I don't have any friends. I don't connect with any people at all. I'm living in a little city outside of Saigon called Tuyamot, and it is like very small and kind of sprawling and not a huge expat population. I'm here because my husband is a teacher and he teaches at a university. It's a university for Vietnamese students, so it's not like an international university. And so we talked to some of his like coworkers, but we don't really have much in common with them. So we're not really what you would call friends with them. Like we're friendly and we occasionally will go to a dinner or something with some of them, but we're not like friends with anyone. So it's been a little tough being here because we just don't have any social life at all. We live about an hour and a half from Saigon, which is where we would probably make friends, but we don't go that often just because it's kind of a pain to get there. And, you know, and well, obviously now it's in Vietnam, it's pretty open. There's not really any social distancing or anything happening right now. So things are getting back to normal. So we could start going back to the city, but right now my husband's working on his master's degree online, and so he's basically always working on his thesis paper right now. So like we haven't been doing anything on the weekends, so we're just like I'm stuck at home.
And what do you think is the biggest factor preventing you from forming friendships out there? Is it the language?
Oh, well, it's so, yeah, I mean, like most Vietnamese, especially around here, don't speak almost any English, and I don't speak almost any, like they speak more English than I speak Vietnamese, we'll say, but not very much. Like a lot of people could just like get by, like daily interactions, like, you know, like going to the store and buying something or whatever, like people can do some of that, like numbers and stuff. So I haven't even really considered making friends with locals. I mean, this is the third city I've lived in. I lived in 2 cities in China for a while. I lived in Suzhou and Shanghai. And Shanghai is an amazing city, and it's filled with lots of expats. So I had a lot of friends there. In Suzhou, it was mostly just, again, my husband's coworker friends. But it was still like, we had some social pool to pick from. And in Shanghai, there are quite a bit of Anglophile locals, like people who are into English speakers and like speak pretty good English, so they seek out, you know, foreigners. So that was not bad at all. But here, there's just no social pool. There's like, you know, and I want to say that in Vietnam, at least where we are, it's a little bit rougher, and I think the people attracted to living here are a little bit more like the people here are either young and like kind of party people and like wild, or older and like settling and like getting married and stuff like that, like to locals, like they're sort of like old and like not interesting, or young and too crazy, and we're at an age where we want someone kind of in between, like someone who's interesting but not like wants to just like get totally drunk every night and like party. I mean, that's not interesting to me at all. So yeah, so it's basically there's just not a huge pool of people to pick from. If and when we start hanging in Saigon more, we might make some friends. But you know, at this age, it's a little difficult to just like strike up conversations with strangers, and especially when you're not frequently going to the same places. You know, it's like it's one thing when, like, if you go to the same bar every week and see the same people, you kind of like eventually start initiating contact and like talking. But like when we go to the city, we go like once a month and like don't usually go to the same place twice. So You know,
Mm-hmm.
we're like tourists when we go there. Um, but I stay in touch with like people I met in Shanghai. Oddly enough, like one woman I was just talking to earlier today, she's originally from Australia, but now she lives in Singapore. And another woman I know from the UK is now living in Switzerland. So like, it's kind of weird because most of the people I talk to are not like on a regular basis are not in the US. They're sort of other places in the world at this point.
Mm. Yeah, we left off. You were telling me about, socializing where you are in
Yeah.
Vietnam and how things aren't so peachy keen in that realm. So it makes me think, are you longing for Chicago? Do you miss it dearly, or are you missing China? Where's your heart?
Um, well, honestly, more often than not lately, if I feel like wanting to be somewhere else, it's usually Shanghai, not Chicago, even though I only lived there for a year. It's just a really, really awesome city, and I met cool people there, and like, uh, I'm an artist. I don't know how much you know about me, really. Like, I mean, we haven't really been like too like watching each other closely. I don't think so. But anyway, the year that I lived in Shanghai was like one of my best art years, like both in terms of what I made, but also I sold like a lot of work during that time, and so I kind of missed that. It's been like totally the opposite here. Although not my work itself is not suffering per se, but it is a little bit just because I had so much positive reinforcement there that I was like constantly really excited to work. And like here, it's like more self motivation rather than outward, approval or whatever.
Hmm. Do you think you'll ever wind
Uh,
up back in Shanghai?
it's pretty doubtful, mostly because the reason why we didn't stay. My husband was there teaching again, and he really hated teaching there. And a lot of it had to do with like where he was teaching, but he just didn't like the student body a lot. And he worked in two different schools in China. However, I do think that a lot of it was a lot of the problem was that he worked at two different schools that were like high-end schools, but they were like the low end of the student population. So basically, all of the students were really entitled rich kids who weren't interested in learning, which is like the worst combination to have because they're all problems and they're all like don't want to work and they don't want to learn and they're entitled and most of them were like you can't make me do it, my dad owns this company and stuff
Mm.
like that.
Ugh.
It would be like so and those schools tend to be just money factories, so the schools themselves never like
Mm.
do any real strict like if like they barely ever kick anyone out because they want their tuition. Like the schools were like $20,000 a year for a high school, like ridiculous tuition. So they didn't want to like kick anyone out, even if a student was like, no, I'm not going to do that every day. No, I don't want to. Like
Hmm.
there's nothing you
Okay.
can do. You can't
No
reprimand them.
problem. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So he didn't really like being in that situation, but at the same time, he didn't really want to work at like a serious school either because they work you so hard at those schools in China. Like, you start at 7 a.m., you leave at 7 p.m. You're expected to do like two extracurriculars, and you don't get paid extra and all this stuff. And like a lot of the teachers that we met that taught at like the nicer international schools, they were like, they liked their jobs, but they were like, that's all they did. They and like, you know, people like to have lives outside of work, but a lot of those people didn't. They just worked nonstop. So he likes like where he's at now, he works till like 4:30. He has a 15-minute walk home. Then we have all night to do stuff, and that's how he wants it. So.
Okay, yeah. And what about Chicago? You think you'll ever move back?
um, so to answer your question about right now, the way America looks right now, there's nothing tempting. Like I don't think either of us would be able to find a job in this moment. Um, and even if we did, it'd be very weird and like difficult and like with the current climate, things are just crazy. Part of me feels guilty for not being there, for not like standing with people and like going to protests and stuff like that. But at the same time, I feel like kind of lucky that I'm not having to live through the kind of turmoil that people are living in. So at present, no, I don't, miss it per se. Um, and in actuality, one of the main motivators for us leaving the States was both of us worked a lot. And I especially had a full-time job that included an hour commute every both ways. And I was trying to make art. So my life was like constant work. And I saw very little of friends to the point where I think I lost some friends because they thought I was avoiding them. Not that I just didn't have time. But I was really trying to make art a priority. So I would like get home from work. It'd be like 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night. I'd eat dinner and then I'd go in my studio for another 3 hours and then go to work the next day. And I would do that many days a week and stuff. And it was like I had no social life. And when you're an artist, you also like being social is like a huge part of being a successful artist. You need to go to gallery openings and like interact with other artists and stuff like that. And I didn't have time to do that. So it was like really just spinning my wheels there. And I feel like that's like the trap of America is that like you have to work all the time and there's no live work balance. Now I'm on the other side of the pendulum though. Like I don't really have any balance. All I do is art, which is kind of work for me, but it's definitely more enjoyable. But I couldn't do it if I lived in the States. We both need to be working. Here, we can survive on just my husband's salary, and I can afford to not work. And I sell a little bit of art right now, but not enough to live off of. So, I like my situation as far as it is. It could be improved, but right now, the way the world is, it definitely can't. Like, we're lucky that we can survive compared to some people. I think just some people are like without jobs, without, knowing what the future is going to bring. We're pretty lucky, really.
I think so too. Yeah, I feel a bit blessed in that respect. For the last year or so, my wife and I have spoken of and made rough plans about moving back to the United States, knowing that the pressure would be on and the work would have to increase and all of that. Despite all of that, we still wanted to just to have that electrifying energy that you find there, that connectivity, that synergy, that feeling. Germany is not known for being the funniest place on the planet. Um, so we were hungry for that, both of us. My wife, perhaps even more so than I. But now it seems as though that would be so incredibly risky because, we have a child. I don't know if you know it, but I'm a papa.
Yeah, I did know that. I caught that.
Oh, you caught that? Okay. So,
Yeah.
too much pressure surrounding that move. Perhaps in the future, though, I have high hopes for where United States could go. The trajectory could be very good from this point forward. But because of the safety and security concerns, having a child, it just seems far too risky at the moment. So yeah, I feel blessed, and I also share in that guilt as well because I am American and I want to stand next to my fellow Americans and do my best to work on the problems that Americans face. And sometimes doing it remotely from here or even speaking about it, there's that little sense of, am I welcome to speak? Do you guys want to hear me? Because
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
so far away. But yeah, I mean, speaking of friendships and, Illinois, are you still in touch with any of the original OG crew from back in the day?
Like from Andrew times?
Yeah, like from our time?
Um, it's really weird. From Andrew, there are some people I talk to, but not like, you know, like on any type of regular basis. And like I reconnected with some people recently that I hadn't really talked to, like Angie Dank. I don't know.
I
Do you
remember,
remember
sure,
her? Like,
sure.
and then it was really weird. Like Nicole Webster and I got a little close for a little while, like just before I left. Uh, and it's weird because she like was really present for a little while, and like now I haven't seen or heard from her, and I actually have been meaning to like try and figure out what happened to her because she was like really vocal on social media for a little while, and then all of a sudden like I haven't seen or heard from her at all. Um, but like um, you know, when we were in high school, like most of my close friends at the time while I was at Andrew were not Andrew students. Like not really. Like I was really good friends with Ryan Tippett,
Right.
and Gail Camberos, and like neither of them went to Andrew. And I still talk to them with some regularity. Um, like Gail and I, our birthdays are pretty close together, so a lot of times in Chicago we'd see each other around our birthdays, and we used to run into each other at concerts a lot. Um, but like I said, in general, before I left Chicago, I felt out of touch with a lot of people just because I've never had time to really do a lot of socializing. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like who, like, and you know, even like who they all went to prom with. Like a lot of those people didn't go to our school.
That's so true.
Remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that, but I had forgotten until now that the people that we spent time with and had those wonderful feelings with, yeah, they weren't really from Andrew. And a lot of it
Yeah.
happened at Off the Alley, which now I'm piecing together because I hadn't realized that you had lived in Burbank. So was it you that knew of Off the Alley and introduced it to the Andrew folk, or how did that happen? Off the Alley, by the
That's a
way, to
good.
the viewers back home, was this amazing all-age club located in Burbank, Illinois, and they had a
Um,
juice bar with freezer pops and the best music, lots of wax tracks, lots of uh, foot pounding energy, and my God, we had so much fun dancing there.
however, it was in Homewood, Illinois.
Oh, that was
Not
Homewood, Illinois. Ah,
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
So, no, I learned about the alley after I moved to Tinley, and I don't remember who introduced me to it. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's obviously that was like huge for me. My junior year, I went every weekend.
Oh yeah.
Uh, yeah, sometimes twice in a weekend. And then like I was also in bands like around that time, and like so they had punk shows there on Saturdays sometimes, and I played there occasionally. Like I think after I graduated, more so from from Andrew when I was in college.
Hmm.
I don't know.
I remember seeing you
Did you?
play at Record
I,
Swap in Tinley Park.
I was going to ask you if you ever saw us play
I did,
because
yeah.
I the timeline for me because my band also was not. It was like my Burbank friends. I was in that band with them, so it was hard to remember how it like intertwined. It was like yeah,
It was after I
yeah, it was.
moved and I was visiting that I saw you play at Record Swap. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, so it was after you moved to Florida, and
Yeah,
you
it
were
was
just
after. Yeah, and
okay.
then in Florida, my position was as soon as I graduate high school, I'm moving back. I'm moving back. And I
Yeah,
stuck to
yeah.
my guns. I had that position when I landed in Florida. I didn't know anybody there. Luckily, I met incredible people in Florida, but I still stuck to those guns. And it was a good feeling because when I left to attempt living in Illinois once again, I left with this beautiful feeling of I love this place too now. So my wings were spread. I was fully motivated and energized. And then I moved back, which didn't work out so well. I was there for only a month because the job I had, telemarketing New York Times at the time, just was impossible. Taking buses in the morning and connecting and all this was just haphazard. I had nowhere to really stay. I was sleeping on different couches, but it was a great month. It was an incredible month. I had so much fun during that month. I I saw shows. I think you were there too when we saw Weezer or with Lush,
Maybe.
perhaps. Or I think no,
Lush.
we were at this show. The last show I saw in Illinois before I moved to Florida, which was Catherine Wheel. Were we there
Okay.
too? I think perhaps,
Aragon? Was it at Aragon, maybe?
perhaps.
I think
Gosh, I
that's
have such fuzzy memories. Or Therapy, some band we saw. It was the last show I saw there. And I think when I came back for the month, we also saw a show together. I don't know. It was a crazy time. It's so funny to think back to those days and how kind of innocent we were and kind of behind the technological curve, like I remember we were pen pals and the long distance phone calls costed like astronomical amounts. I'd, you know, uh, go over to like a drugstore in Florida and say, "Oh, can I use the phone real quick to call my parents?" And as soon as they weren't looking, I'd hit the long distance to Chicago. And I would do that so often because my heart was so very much there. I mean, off the alley, and those experiences really kind of shaped me in a big way. Another thing that happened when I revisited is when I felt like I was nearly kidnapped. Do you remember that?
no.
Do you-
Wait, by who?
I don't know, but it was you, I, and Jennifer Mysack, and we were sitting in her driveway, and we all decided to discuss what scares us most of all. And I don't remember what you said, I don't remember what she said, but I remember saying how what scares me most of all is the thought of being kidnapped. That's the most fearful thing I can think of. And I remember she had to go, no, maybe it was Cindy's driveway. I don't know. I guess it doesn't matter. But she had to go to bed. And then you were going to walk back to your house. And I had to go back to Jim Curtis's house, which is where I was staying. And I said, "Oh, I'll walk with you, Brian." And I walked you home. And I remember getting to your place and then feeling, oh shit, I've got to walk home alone now to Jim Curtis's house. And I'm terrified. It's dark, it's old Tinley, it's scary. We just talked about in length what scares me most. And I remember you kindly saying, I can ask if I can borrow the car, take you home. I was like, no, I'll be okay. You remember any of that?
Kind of, I do. I do, but
Okay.
I don't really remember you feeling like you. So you were actually accosted or something?
Nearly. I feel nearly. So I began walking away from your house. And I was walking in the center of the street because it was too scary to be on the sidewalk with these big trees and these dark shadows. So I was in the center of the street for the street lights, and I was singing out loud Frank Black, Hang On to Your Ego. And I was just walking, trying to just focus on the lyrics and not get caught up in my mind. And that worked for about a block and a half. So I was like, okay, I can move it back to the sidewalk. I'm good. I'm good. I get back on the sidewalk, and then I see a car approaching from the distance, my direction. And there weren't any cars or anybody on the street. So I took, notice to this, and it was moving slowly towards me, and in my direction rather. And then it punched the gas, made a beeline straight to me, and then before it kind of came up on the curb and hit me, and stopped right there, right in front of me. And it was dark, and the windows were darkened because there was no light, and I couldn't see who was in the car, and my heart was beating outside my chest. And the only thing I could think of doing was going like this, like, hello, hello, nothing, not a peep, not a sound, nothing. So I'm just trying to collect myself, thinking, what, fight or flight? What the fuck? So I decided, okay, I'll just keep it cool and I'll just keep moving. So I keep moving. I leave the car behind me now, but I'm looking in the corner of my eye and I see it move away and then change its direction to kind of follow me. So I'm thinking, okay, okay, fuck. And it took off and continued going. And I was completely scared shitless at that point. So I'm just like walking home really fast, and I'm on another street now, and I see headlights again coming from the distance approaching my direction, and I'm like, oh god, is it them? So I ran up on the side of a house and hid behind this bush, which was in itself scary enough. I didn't need anything else. It was dark. I'm by this bush. There's like the window of the basement right next to me, and I'm like, oh God. This car slowly comes down the block. It's the same car. So now I'm thinking, oh my God, did they see me run up to this bush? Are they gonna come and jump out of the car? So I'm like, kind of, what's my exit strategy? I guess I'm gonna have to hop that fence, and I'm just too much fear for any young man at that time. But luckily, it just continued going. So
Yeah.
apparently, it didn't see me, and then I just took off running. And I was so confused. I took a wrong street, made my trip longer. Finally, got back to Jim Curtis's house. The door swings open. I'm totally out of breath, asthma attack, the works, and terrified because I thought I was nearly kidnapped. And I could have sworn when I told you perhaps the next day that you told me I heard a car hit their brakes, and I thought, should I go out and look?
I don't remember that.
Okay.
I knew when you asked me to do this that I was not going to remember stuff because I have like the worst memory. I swear. Uh, I mean, like there are things that I remember for sure, but like, I'm like just really terrible with like number one, putting things in chronological order. Like I'll like mix that all up, but just even like specific things like that, I don't remember. I mean, I went to so many shows when I was like, I mean, in my life, but like I used to go to like a show every 2 weeks, if not more, and like so they all have blended together. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm fortunate I took as many photographs as I did. Like I have so many photos on my like in my you know my computer's like library. And I was just looking at them the other day. I'm like, man, I've been to so many shows, and like some of the bands I don't even know who they are. I'm like, I don't remember what band this is, because I would go to so many like little shows at like Empty Bottle or something where, I'd be lucky if I knew one of the bands, but sometimes I just go because like the name sounded interesting and stuff.
Mm-hmm. I know I don't remember much either. Like speaking of off the alley, that was so important to me. It still is, but because of a feeling. I really have trouble remembering any specifics. I just have these
Especially like a
flashes.
specific night, like any specific night. It's more like a feeling and like you could visualize what it looked like sort of, but like not interactions with people. I mean, I met my first boyfriend there, so I remember that night.
Uh-huh.
But like other than that, like not really.
I just remember they would play Pailhead and they'd flip the lights on when everyone would go completely nuts. And
Yeah.
I remember there being a black box somehow located in the middle of the floor that we would stand on. I remember for
Yeah.
whatever reason, a lot of us fellas would take our pants down to our knees or ankles and dance in our boxer shorts. I
I
remember
think that wasn't a regular thing.
it was for, I think, a few weeks at least. I don't know.
Really?
Sometimes I confuse actual memories for photographs because I have a lot of photographs too, and sometimes the photographs um, limit what I can remember, and then I
Yeah.
expand upon the photograph and think that was bigger than it actually was.
Yeah, I mean, so I noticed, number one, I think I told you, I found out about your channel through Dominic, who, he like told me about it, which was just like last week. So I've only watched one episode of this show or whatever it is, podcast. And it was with Melissa and who I think the other woman, what's her name?
Sabrina.
She's Sabrina. Yeah. I mean, so, and I noticed you would post like photographs from like that time in your life, and I was like, oh, you probably have some photos from our time too, because I remember when you worked at Walgreens, was it? And you worked in the photo lab, and you would like steal so many pictures.
I was a young person, rehashers, so you must forgive me in my naivete at the time. I felt as though the corporate structure needed a little bit of checking. So yeah, I did take lots of film and distribute it out to friends and then collect their film and have it processed for them as well. You remember when you used to come into Walgreens and you'd come up to the cashier checkpoint where I was standing and it was just whatever you wanted, bruh. Whatever you need. Oh my God. Not even subtle, not even to a little extent. Just, but it was wonderful because you remember those bricks of cassette tapes, Maxwell 5 packs. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
if I gave you 2 of those bricks, I wound up with like 4 mixtapes or five. It was a nice
Yeah.
trade-off.
I do remember that. It's interesting because I did when you first started talking, I'm like, I don't really remember that. But then you said tapes, and I remember like that was the main thing I wanted. I just wanted blank tapes because I wanted to like record music.
I still have a lot of those tapes that you made me.
You're so lucky. I really um when I was in college, my mom called me one weekend and said, I'm moving. You have this weekend to take whatever you want from the house,
Oh.
and the rest I'm throwing away. And
Oh.
I went, at the time, I owned a Honda Civic CRX with like no space in it. And I had just gotten my first apartment, and I was living with some guy, and we didn't really have enough furniture, and I really wanted a desk. So one of the things I took was a desk, which was like the stupidest thing. Like there were so many like things that with emotional value that I should have taken, and one of them was my collection of cassettes, because there were like cassettes of me in like first grade telling like stories that I really wish I had, and like I ended up throwing that desk away like 4 months later. And it's like, why did I keep that? That was so stupid. And like, so I like lost all this stuff. Uh, you know,
Oh.
sometimes I get accused of being a pack rat, but like, you do miss those things like that you keep. This, you know, and like living here now, I took only what fit in the suitcase to move abroad, and so I don't really have a lot of stuff. I do. All my stuff is in storage back in the States. It's actually in Dominic's attic.
Ah.
So, uh, so I will be able to get that stuff again one day. Um, but who knows when that will be. Going
Mhm.
back to the original question about moving back, I'm not. We're not ruling out ever moving back to the States. Although we both think that maybe Chicago won't be the place that we live, just because it's expensive. Um, and you know, we're at a point where we don't need Chicago itself, like the amenities that come with living in a city. We think we could probably handle living in a smaller city, or not even a city, but like a suburb or something.
Mhm.
But one of the things I miss most living in Vietnam, particularly, is just culture in general, like going to a theater or an art gallery, or especially concerts or stuff like that. There's not a lot of that here. There's a little bit, and again, I think if we lived in Saigon, it'd be different. But like where I am now, it's like there's not even really a bookstore
Mm.
that sells English books in my city. I don't think so. Yeah, it's that's like one of the things I miss most is just like doing cultural stuff.
Mhm. Yeah, we brought up all those photographs. I have tons of photographs of our time, but they're back in my sister's garage, so I don't have
Uh,
access to them at the moment. But I'm sure I
okay,
can dig up a few somewhere on some hard drive somewhere, some
yeah.
scans. Um, but yeah, they tell the story of our coming of age out there in Chicago, and they also display your marvelous hairstyle. I honestly have to say that in high school, you had the best hair and timeless, in fact. I think even today, even by today's standards, if that hairstyle was rolled out, it would still take the winner's cup because you had it, man. It was this poof that just kind of did this thing, and And I don't know. I think everyone was in love with it at the time. I think you probably had a lot of pawing at it, I would imagine, Nora.
I think a little bit. I think I probably, I mean, I could be making it up, but I think like in at least one yearbook, best hair might have been something that happened. I
Deservingly
remember,
so.
I remember a lot of girls used to like my hair and say, "I wish my hair was as thick as yours," or whatever.
I remember a
My
lot of
hair,
girls just liked you, like
yeah,
really liked you, like crushing on you hard. And that was part of my fascination with you was how does that work? How does he do that? What is it that I need to copy from this person? How do I emulate this? What do I do? But yeah, I mean, you brought up the yearbook thing, which reminds me that because of you and my Walgreens photo fetish, my very first photograph was published because you picked one of the pictures I took of you at Off the Alley to be in the yearbook because as a senior in high school at Victor J, you can have a personal photo in the yearbook as well.
oh wow.
And that was the first photo I've ever had published. Yeah. You and your hair. Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
you played such a significant role in me understanding the world. I mean, you were my first gay friend, Brian, and prior to you, that was a taboo, not by me personally, but just by my surroundings, by the community, I mean, I think a lot of young kids don't realize that back in the 90s, it wasn't, or in the early 90s, I should say, not cool technically
Yeah.
to be gay in high school, not where we were. I think there
Yeah.
were only maybe a few people that were outwardly gay that I even came across. There must have been a lot of closeted people at that time, I would imagine. But
Yeah.
when I found out that you were gay, I was immediately like a tractor beam attracted to you. I wanted to know you. I wanted to figure it out. I wanted to understand it, and it was like this amazing kind of experience because you were the coolest guy ever. And I'm like thinking, what is all this beef? I don't get it. So from that point forward, I was like, I am going to be the advocate. I am going to stand up for this. This is like the coolest guy ever. How can anyone have trouble with this?
It's really funny because I remember one of the times we were just like walking down the hallway at school or something, and you very casually said something like, "Oh yeah, Brian, you're pretty funny for a faggot," and like I thought it was so funny, and everyone around us was like really scandalized and like, "Joe, how could you say that?" And I was like, "No, it's funny because he doesn't mean it. It's like he's joking and like he's so comfortable he can do that. You people who are being like so scandalized are the people that are like actually make me think twice because you think it's a problem.
Mm.
Like he understands that it's not a problem." And so I would often relay that story to people. I was like, my friend Joe was one of the people that was so comfortable around me that he could joke about it and it wasn't like an issue. I mean, I think in today's climate, it probably would have been not appropriate to say, but to me, it was like, reclaiming something, like, like being, like I found it powerful to be able to like have you say it and not be, you know, not be sensitive about it.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely got a lot more people saying it that were not trying to be nice or funny.
At Victor J, at Andrew?
As you know, yeah, at Andrew. I mean, it wasn't too bad in my memory. There was definitely a lot. There were like quite a few people, and I think the funniest thing that I always think about too is how like if the captain of a sports team didn't like me, the entire sports team didn't like me.
Mm.
So like I think like I remember Paul Paniotu and Joel, like they were football and they liked me. So the football team had no problem with me. But then, like, obviously, I remember his name. Guy who was like the head of the wrestling team, that blonde guy. He hated both of us.
The wrestling team was a
But
no-go
the
for me,
wrestling team,
yeah. Oh my God, they were the worst. And they made you do it in gym class. We had to all wrestle. I hated it.
Do you remember that well?
Oh my God, so awful. My mother, she gave me these papers that excused me from gym class because of my asthma, and I had them without a date on them. And I had multiple issues of them in my folder, and I would just put the date in and say, sorry, I can't today. And that would often put me sitting out, but with the girls. I don't know why, but they would just put me out. And that was cool by me. I loved that. Another thing I hated was when we would have to be forced to play skins versus shirts. I hated
Oh
that.
yeah,
I
I
fucking hated
do.
that. Oh my God.
Yeah,
I felt
that was
humiliated.
that was particularly for me. I I mean, I was a very late bloomer, like very late. Like I didn't really go through puberty until I was like 18, like my senior year of high school. I mean, did you go to when I was a junior? I was in a play. Did you see that play? Do you remember
No.
that?
No.
Uh, it was the only play I was in at Andrews, so I thought maybe you would have gone. Um, but I played like an adult doctor, and I looked like a little kid in high school. Like I looked at least like a 12-year-old or
Oh,
something when I was
totally. You
16.
look like a cherub. You had these
Yeah.
rosy red cheeks. You were like a what is it, a porcelain doll.
Yeah. So for me, like shirts and skins, like I like had no armpit hair. I was like, I looked like a little boy. I hated it.
I still don't have armpit hair, and I certainly didn't at that time. And that was something that was enough to me bullied over. I remember if you didn't have leg hair, if you didn't have armpit hair, people got down on you. It was hard. And I remember also swimming. Then you had to take all your clothes off in the locker room, and people were just on standby to see if you have pubic hair or not, just to fucking razz you. So bizarre. Gym class was such a weird thing. I remember having so many interactions with people, but luckily there was always some individuals that had my back, so they would intervene before I would get smashed and pummeled. But I would do
Yeah.
my best to stand up to the biggest of them.
The only things I remember about gym at Andrew was I made it a point to take 0 hour gym, and I think like that attracted a specific kind of student because they took 0 hours so that they could take other classes during the day or something like that. So like most of the like kind of like I don't know rowdy kids or whatever wouldn't take 0 hour because they would just like let it be during the day.
Mm,
But like that saved me a little bit because I was like with more like I don't know academic students or something like that.
hmm
But I do remember one of the first times I was like confronted about being gay when it was still a rumor. I remember like someone asked me like just straight out. They're like, "Hofmeister, are you gay?" And I was like, "What difference does it make to you?" And I don't remember what he said. And I said, well then I said, I think I said maybe or something like that. And they're like, do you have a boyfriend? I'm like, I have a couple.
Eh,
And they're like, woo! And they're like, Hoffmeister's getting laid.
ah,
And then, for whatever reason, acting like I was like getting all this action gave me a certain amount of respect, and
ah.
it felt like it could have turned a different way, but because I like made it sound like I was confident and whatever, they kind of let it go. It was weird, but it was like kind of that like sparked something in me that made me think, okay, you just got to be confident about it and not like be scared about it. That seemed to be like the kind of thing that would make people, you know, I think it's not fun when people uh, are not victims. You know what I mean?
Totally. I mean, I've been asked that also lots, are you gay? Are you gay? I've heard that so often back then. And I would always answer similarly. I would say, maybe. What do you think? And that was it. I'd leave it right there. I don't know. I'm like, I don't know. We'll
Yeah.
see. And it was always the end of it. There was like, there's nowhere else to go. You can't razz that person anymore. And I remember having moments where I would just be defiant, you know. I remember Brian Krieger, the big Brian Krieger, you know, this big jock. I remember he would always like to bully kids, and I was often subject of his bullying. And one day he was there talking shit to some kid who's sitting up against the wall, gym class, he's standing in front of him. I'm like, fuck this guy. And I just deep-pantsed him and booked it. And I just ran. I ran straight into the coach's office in the locker room and just whack. And they were talking, the coaches. I was like, he's going to kill me. He's going to kill me. You know, because he was right on my ass. He followed me right in the office. I was like, he's going to kill me. He's going to get me. And they're like, get out of here, Krieger. And this was creepy. I don't know if I ever told you this, but they had me sit down. They took a spotlight, a lamp off of one of the desks, shined it in my face, held it in front of me, one of the guys, turned off the lights of the office, so it's just that light now, and I couldn't see. I remember just like looking down because it was so bright, because it was literally in my face. So I'm looking down, and then what I see right in front of my chest here is a golf club. He's holding a golf club up to my chest, and they're saying something like about, you know, you want to fuck around, you know, you think you're going to get away with some kind of threatening kind of speech or whatever. I remember being really, really afraid. And I was like, no, you know, whatever. Oh, no, not me, kind of thing. And then, okay, lights off, get out of here, right? And I remember leaving that office just like, oh my God. Like,
That's insane.
there was plenty of insanity back then. I remember having run-ins with teachers that would be criminal today. Really. Just They got away with a lot of shit back then. The early 90s was much different than it is today, where kids are, you know, heard and, you know, so on and so forth, more so. But it also made it fun and dangerous in a way. I don't know. But I really enjoyed my Victor J. Andrew days, especially my junior year. I felt like it was just so much fun. And I think, didn't we show up to high school like an hour early just to roll around the hallways and be goofballs?
Well, that's the thing is like I think I remember that you like I had 0 hour gym, so you would show up and I'd see you before I went to gym, and then you'd like hang out at school.
Yeah, just rolling
and then
around.
I'd come back out and you'd still.
I loved it. I loved it. Oh my God, Victor J. and those lockers. Oh, so cool. I remember I had a boombox on its side in my locker. I remember playing Ghetto Boys, like blasting as loud as it can be in the middle of classes, and then like, you know, walking to my class late, and everybody in the classroom looking out the little glass slit in the door, like, who the fuck was playing that, you know? And just like, yeah, it was a funny time. Do you remember it was lunch, and I think it was towards the end of the year, and one of those big jocks came over to slap the back of your head?
And you caught his fist.
Yeah, I caught his fist, and he like threw me up on the lunch table or something like that. I have a photo of us reenacting that with Tim Cork, and Tim is playing the jock, and he's about to hit you, and I'm like this. A reenactment photo.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was fun, and I went around telling everyone how I kicked his ass. I beat his ass. There were jocks that thought I belonged to a gang because of the game I would talk. I remember having friends come up to me and saying, "This guy just asked me if I'm in your gang." I'm like, oh my God. Talking game. But for you,
That's
it was
funny.
more positive than negative, I assume, because you seem to be always happy and like full of spirit. I don't remember you like having moments of elongated sorrow. It was just a couple of confrontations that would be frustrating.
Yeah.
You'd snap right out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I was generally, and to this day, I'd say I'm generally a positive person. I don't really, I mean, I knew there were things that were like not good, and a lot of times when I relay stories to other people of things that happened, they'd be like, "Oh my God, you must have been miserable." Like kind of more annoying. It was like just like when these things would happen, I'd be like, "Man, that sucked," but you know, it's a moment in time. I would say that one of the bigger, like, really negative things was when I got my house spray painted on. That was really shitty.
I don't
Do you remember that?
No.
wonder if that was after you left. I don't think so, though. Yeah, so someone spray painted the word faggot on the side of my house.
Oh my God. No.
And and uh, I think I know who it was now. Someone told me that they knew who it was, but it was like years later, so whatever. But like, yeah, that was shitty. It was mostly just like I was upset because I got home from school, or maybe it was like the morning or something, and as I like was walking up, I saw my dad like scrubbing the word faggot off the side of our house. And we lived on like a corner of a not busy street, but a pretty busy street. So it's like you can only imagine how many people were driving past that. I felt really bad for my dad at that point, but like I don't know. I like even now it's like it didn't bother me that much personally. It was just like, you know, shitty that my dad had to like live with that.
Yeah.
But he took it okay, and it wasn't really an issue. I think that's usually how my dad dealt with things, was just to not talk about them. So
Speaking of your dad, your last name, Hofmeister. I hadn't put that together back then, but now I live in Germany. That's a German name, right?
yeah,
Hofmeister
yeah,
literally translates to court master.
yeah,
So what's up
yeah.
with that? Are you German, Brian? Or part
Well,
German?
I
Or
mean, yeah. I mean, I think I'm like a fair amount German, although I don't really like all of my grandparents were like second generation American. Like
hmm
my great grandparents came from different countries, but like so I had no connection to any of my ethnicity. Like I know I'm German, Dutch, Czechoslovakian, but like I don't know anything about those countries or know anyone in them or anything like that. Like all of our family pretty much migrated to the States, so I'm sure I have relatives somewhere that I don't know who they are or anything about them, um, which is kind of strange because, like, at this point, I mean, I speak pretty fluent Spanish, quite a bit of French, quite a bit of Mandarin, but no German at all. Like, not even a sprinkle. You've been there kind of a long time now. Have you? Have you picked up a lot of German or? Yeah.
Ja, ich spreche Deutsch, aber es ist nicht so farbenfroh, nicht so lebendig, aber, I do my best.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I've been talking a lot, but I really don't know a lot about what your life is like right now. Like, are you working full time? Do you work? I mean, you're probably working from home right now, right? Or not? I don't know. Tell
Yeah.
me something.
I mean, honestly, when you were describing your situation, it somewhat mirrors mine because my wife is working full time and I'm not. I'm basically the guy who's trying to rub a couple sticks together to get a spark flying. What happened was about 6 years ago, I formed a company with a partner. It was a silkscreen printing company, and it was in my head that this would be a very successful endeavor. And I had these high hopes of working and collaborating with artists and beating their expectations in this wonderful kind of environment. Blah blah blah. And I assumed I would be making XYZ money. So I was like, let's have a child, let's have a baby. It's a great time. So we went down that path, but it turns out that that business was the most difficult time of my life. It was awful, terrible, frustrating, chaotic, disappointing, and crushing in a sense, soul crushing.
Wow.
Just didn't work out. Every contract was for big corporate endeavors. Nobody cares. There's no praise. There's just a wish for the cheapest products possible, but the best quality. All of that. And
Yeah.
it's a very laborious thing to do. So it was very exhausting. I'd come home, toxified with chemicals. I can't even touch my baby son. I got to go delouse in the shower now and all this. It was just big struggle for me. Luckily, I got out of that mostly unscathed, but because I was so confident about it, I kind of severed my connections to the working world. That was my path, right? So now I'm out of it, and luckily, my child was about 2.5, 3 at the time, so old enough for my wife to kind of engage back in the working world. So she got a great job, thank God. She's a receptionist at a law firm, and now I'm in the position where I can sort things out and try to find a new path for myself. And I've had many ideas. I'm an ideas guy. Some of them are just on paper, others have been partially built, others are partnership ideas that I've been working on with people. And there are some things that are slowly rolling out in the background. But what you can see visibly is, the YouTube channel. I have this kind of pipe dream that at one time in the near or distant future, that I can perhaps find myself in a position where maybe 1,000 or 2,000 bucks a month is coming in from YouTube related activities, kind of a thing. Um,
Yeah.
that would be a dream of mine, and it fits in my window of opportunity because I'm the primary caregiver. So I take my son to kindergarten and pick him up, and there's my window. And that doesn't really give room to do anything full time. Part time work is kind of non existent. I'm not going to go even looking for that. But I do teach English, and I have since I arrived. I went heavy with it in the beginning. It was my primary source of income while I was living alone here. Specialized teaching children, but I teach adults too. I teach business, you name it.
Yeah.
And then I kind of walked away from that with the silkscreening printing business. But now that that's finished, I've engaged with English, but because of the window, I can't go full time. So primarily, I do it privately, sometimes like
Yeah.
this, and
Hmm.
other times in my kitchen or elsewhere. And I've always I love teaching English. It's an amazing feeling, and it's something that I feel that I benefit from, not only financially, but my heart. I know that I'm providing a service to people that also is beneficial. So there's that mutually beneficial feeling, and I can feel proud about what I do. And it's so funny because when I began, I was Mr. Fake It Till You Make It. I remember standing in the parking lot of the school and just some random student walking up to me saying, "Oh yeah, you an English teacher?" "Oh yeah, yeah." I can't. Can you explain? What is it called? Present continuous. What was the question? I think so. Present continuous. And I honestly had no idea or concept of anything grammar related. So I thought continuous. I'm like, well, the figure eight. And they're like, no, what do you mean? I said, oh, that the figure eight, right? It represents infinity, and it just keeps going on and on and on. I'm like, that's basically like the present continuous form. It's continuous. Because I was thinking, what the fuck is continuous? So I was like, so that was where I was at, right? I'd go into my classroom, I'd rock it out with like, hey, everybody, let's talk about what we did last week and what we're gonna do next week, and
Yeah.
not relying at all on teaching. It was just about human interaction. I focus on conversational techniques, and I think that we have to jump right in. And there would be a question like, well, we'll cover that next week. And I'm like, oh shit, I gotta look that up. But of course, fast forward, 5, 10 years, I feel like I've mastered it. So now I can do all of that. I can get
Yeah.
into the, this, that, the other, and I enjoy it. And I've considered just kind of maybe doing that as my YouTube thing. So I created this channel. I haven't done anything with it yet, but I thought maybe I'll do that. But then the coronavirus thing popped up, right? And American friends of mine are not working, so I have this opportunity to reach out, and I'm having these fantastic phone calls with them, right? I'm just like laughing and laughing because laughs are in short supply in Germany, my friend. I don't know if you know this, but Germany was voted the least funny country in the world back in 2006, just to give you a little idea. So I was laughing and enjoying the conversation so much, and I thought maybe we should just kind of broadcast these conversations. It's fun. So that's how the podcast was born. But I've done artistic things as well. For a while when I first moved here, I felt like, oh my God, what am I, Basquiat or some shit? Like everyone was so into what I was doing. Like it was just incredible. Because in New York, it's saturated. No matter what you're doing, there's 1,000 other varieties of it.
I actually I remember when you were in New York, while you tried to do this thing. I forgot what you called it, but you were like, yeah, I'll just have people pay me to hang out with them for the day, and like I'll take them on like a fun adventure or something.
Special day right away.
Special day right away.
I had it on Craigslist, yeah.
And I think you had like one client.
I had one original client that contacted me through Craigslist without any knowledge of who I was or friends or anything. And it was a really beautiful experience because she was suffering a terminal illness and had been cooped up for so very long, but she was an artist. And I remember I went to her apartment and it was beautifully ornate and so eccentric and what a lovely lady. And she wanted, because just to, I don't know if you remember, but the premise of Special Day Right Away was not just I'll hang out with you. It was that I would take you out to local points of interest, all of which are free, that I've discovered while living in New York that I find amazing and inspiring. And whilst visiting these points of interest, I'll photograph you. And then at the end of the Special Day Right Away, I'll present you with a copy of those photographs, a digital copy on CD, and perhaps put together a small photo album for you as well. So she contacted me, and what she wanted was to document with these photographs her IV that she had to walk around and kind of like model with the IV. And I took her on the Brooklyn Bridge, and we took all these beautiful shots. So that was my only original customer. I had another customer who was visiting a friend of mine from, she was out of state visiting New York, staying with her friend, and her friend knew about my service and said, you know, instead of staying home while I'm working, contact Joe and have a special day right away. You won't regret it. Another great experience. But those I think were the only two customers because they paid and I provided what the service promoted. I had a
Yeah.
couple people reach out to me and sadly say, I have no money, but I want a special day right away. And it was kind of confusing and it was weird, but yeah, it didn't really grow legs, that idea. But it
It
was
seemed
fun.
like a good idea.
Yeah,
I mean,
I mean,
like, and it's the type of thing that like most people that knew you personally were like, you can execute that, but it's conveying to a stranger that they would actually have a good time, like convincing them would be hard. Like, it's a good idea, but only if the person somehow trusts your brand without really knowing you. Like, I mean, like if people who knew you were like, oh, that'd be fun. I totally want to do that. But we already know you and we get it for free. So it's like, you know.
I've always been and remain a very naive person. I just think everybody's good. Nobody's going to question anything. You say that it's a special day right away, they'll understand that. It's not some lure into some dungeon where they're going to be kidnapped. I never think past just the innocence of what I think is, you know, it's gotten me in a lot of trouble. I've had near-death experiences, and um, yeah, I'm a little bit more cautious than I was. I'm in my 40s like you, and but yeah, there was a time where I just was like always kind of feeling the gravity like towards very oddball characters that I would find in my vicinity, no matter what their age or their, you know, wherever they came from. And on occasion, it turned out that maybe I shouldn't just boldly go where no other person seemingly wants to go. Um, but yeah, I've always kind of enjoyed the company of oddballs or, the underdog or whatever you want to call it. Um,
Yeah.
and just kind of standing up for people like that. Or I was always, I always loved sitting in class and if there was a student in trouble, like intervening and defending them and saying, "You're wrong, teacher, not this person." Even if I didn't know the student. I Something in me that does that, that wants that. I don't know. Um, yeah, and I guess you were very much a part of that for me because when I got to Florida, I was new and fresh, but I felt like I still was backing up the people I knew in Illinois. So like I I don't know, it still wasn't cool to be gay. So I wanted people to question me. I enjoyed it that people thought I was gay because that would give me the opportunity to prove to them that you're silly for even thinking that's an issue. So
Yeah.
I wanted that burden. I wanted people to razz me and tease me. And that's why for the senior class picture in Florida, I wore that shirt that I made that said queer. I don't know if I ever told you
Oh,
that
yeah.
story. Maybe?
No, I don't think so.
No? So I made
I
a
don't think
shirt
so.
with
No.
marker on a white shirt. I wrote queer across it. I think Jim Curtis had a shirt like that he bought in store. That's where I got the idea.
Yeah, I remember Jim Curtis's shirt.
I made that shirt with marker and I wore it underneath my shirt. And when it was time for the class picture and everyone's in the stadium seating, I took off the overshirt, so exposing that queer. And I'm sitting next to my friend Edgar, and I'm like putting my arm around him or kissing him on the cheek or doing this or whatever it was because they snapped several pictures so they could stitch it together and find the best one. And I think it was like picture number 6 out of a total of 8 where I went like, ha, like that. And then I got flagged by the dean of students, come here. And I remember walking down the bleacher steps hearing faggot and feeling like shit hit me in my head like a pen or whatever. And I get down there, he's like, you think you're funny? We'll see how funny you are when you don't graduate. And I was like, what? And then it became this big thing where I guess they couldn't enforce me not graduating, but the one thing they could do was ban me from prom. I was banned from my senior prom. And my mom, she came to the school and fought it with me. She's like, you can't ban him from the prom for wearing a shirt that says queer. And they said, well, okay, he can go, but he has to sign a behavioral contract that if we have to speak to him even once during prom, he won't graduate. And my mom and I both were like, go fuck yourself, basically. We're not gonna go walk into that honeypot. So I
Yeah.
didn't go to my senior prom, and I always
Uh,
think back to that and think, man, that is such a sign of the times. Can you imagine today that rolling out the same way? You're banned.
no.
We're not gonna let you graduate. And I wasn't even gay. I wasn't even doing anything gay. And queer doesn't even necessarily mean anything gay, technically. So, oh my God, the overreaction and the support from the overreaction. Nobody said, hey, he disrupted the photo, but okay, go back to class. No, it was a big fucking stink. And then when those pictures finally got printed and were distributed, they chose a picture with me in it. They didn't choose the one that snapped after I got pulled. And for every single photo printed, they scratched off the word queer. So there's this like sore thumb sticking out from the panoramic photo where it was scratched off. And now I have people walking up to me in the hallway, people I don't know. You ruined the picture. My parents are pissed at you. And it became a debate in classrooms. People tell me in homeroom, all we did was talk about whether what you did was right or wrong and if you should be punished or not. It became like a big thing. So crazy. I wish I could go
Wow.
back in a time machine and like run with the ball with that one and take the school down. But I didn't feel like I had anywhere to stand. I felt like that's the machine. You're not allowed to wear that shirt.
Yeah, going back to like how I felt versus like what the reality was and stuff, like there were a couple of things that happened later. Like I went back, I almost never went back to Tinley after I moved away. Like there was just no reason to. But I remember maybe 2 years after I graduated, I was going to Moraine Valley and I went to Orland Mall for like whatever reason. And I was just walking through the mall and someone called me faggot. And I was like, I haven't been to Andrew in 2 years and people still recognize me. And then I remember like talking to someone and they're like, yeah, people know who you are. Like still. Like I met someone who got to Andrew after I left, after I had already graduated, and they knew my name, they knew what I looked like, and they had never met me or anything. Like there was so much like blowback. I met someone who was like 2 or 3 years younger than me, who went to Andrew, and they're like, yeah, I couldn't come out because you were so notorious that no one felt like they could come out because they would be ridiculed the way you were. And I was like, it wasn't that bad. It really wasn't. But I think there was a lot going under the surface that like I didn't even know about. Like people were like mad, not even to my face, and like there were like these like ripples that happened for years after I was gone. It was really weird. And I think 3 people from Andrew have like contacted me since then who are now gay, maybe even more than that, who are like, you were so brave in high school and stuff. And I was like, I didn't even think about it. I was a little like you, I guess, in a way. Like I was just naive. I was just like, I'm gay. That's the truth. Deal with it. Like I didn't really think it was going to be a big deal. I mean, I sort of knew, but at the same time, I just felt like, when you said, oh, a lot of girls had crushes on me, I felt really guilty when girls liked me, and I couldn't tell them like, no, I don't want to date you because why? Like I was like, I have to give a real reason. I can't just say no thanks,
Mm-hmm.
And so that was like one of the reasons why I came out, because there were like girls who like asked me to go out with them, and I was like, you can only like avoid a question for so long, and finally I was like, I had to start telling people, and then I decided to tell the one person who I knew would spread the word the fastest.
Who's that?
Nicole Webster.
Nicole. She's at the center of so many controversies from Victor J. Andrew. It's so funny. She contacted me too in that time that you discussed, where she was very present on social media, and she had her whole thing going, like a magazine and this and that, and it seemed really cool, and I was really happy. And it's so cool how she seemed to survive a lot too, because Victor J. Andrew was not kind to her either, but she seems relatively unscathed and doesn't seem to have any sort of negative reflection on the experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, like, again, I don't know. I haven't been in like a lot of close contact with her. We like started talking quite a bit, and then it just like separated again. So I'm kind of curious what's going on with her. I'll probably like try and reach out to her eventually. But like she commissioned me, and I did like 3 paintings for her. Like I was doing some art, and she liked my style, but the guy she was married to, they really liked lava lamps, and they collected lava lamps. So I did 3 lava lamps for her. It's kind of strange. Yeah. So I did some paintings for her, and like it seemed like we were like gonna start being more like friends, like hanging out and stuff. And then I ended up leaving. So I haven't just been in touch with her, but yeah. But yeah, back in high school though, she liked to talk, and and it was very calculated for me. I was just like, I want everyone to know, but I don't want to have to disseminate the information. So who should I tell? And like, just let it go out on its own. And I told her, and it was really fast. Everyone knew, and I was just like, okay, well now it's out. But it was still kind of a rumor for almost a year. It was like people weren't sure. And then, but by my senior year, then it was like for sure. And then when we went to prom, remember, like I was gonna get beat up. Someone said I was gonna get shot.
Yeah, I forgot the threats. Sorry to interrupt you, but I flashed back to that time because I have memories of that prom, and I had none of that in it. I totally forgot that there was a fear amongst us that you would be really hurt. I remember now.
Yeah, that's why we went as a big group, and like, like I didn't take a couple picture with my boyfriend. I was like, I don't really feel comfortable.
Oh my god!
And I don't know if you remember this, but the vice principal to his office, and he's like, I'm trying to remember what his name was. I'm sure you remember.
I think it was Dick.
Me?
Something Richard or Dick or something.
What was the last name?
Oh.
I don't know.
I spent a lot of time in that office, that's for sure, but I don't remember
I
at the
know.
moment.
That's why I was like, you remember. But anyway, so it was like the only time I was ever called down to the office. I had bought tickets to prom, and my boyfriend's name was Jesse Spencer, Jesse. So my the did he go by Dean or Principal?
And Victor
Do you
J
remember?
was Dean. It was
Dean, yeah. So
it
the
was Dean, I
assistant
think.
dean. So he called me to the office and he's like, so I was going through the tickets sales of prom and I noticed that you have a ticket for a girl's name. And I was like, that's really interesting because the name Jessie is not specifically a girl's name. He said, I noticed it was a boy's name. This is what he said. He didn't say the name. He just, I noticed it was for a boy's name. And I'm like, oh, that's really interesting because it's not necessarily a boy's or a girl's name. It could be either. So obviously someone told you that I bought a ticket for someone of the same sex. So I don't know why you're pretending that you just happened upon it. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, just, okay. He's like, well, that aside, I'm just trying to get an idea of what your intentions are. And I'm like, what my intentions are? I said, I want to go to prom with the person I want to go to prom with. He's like, oh, okay, I see. He's like, well, I just want you to be cautious because it might upset, some people that you're doing this. And I'm like, well, I said, the last thing I want to do is ruin prom. I don't want people to have bad reactions, but I don't think it's fair that I have to make a different choice because other people are reacting to it in a negative way. That doesn't seem fair to me at all. People can, like, however they deal with it is how they're dealing with it. It's not what I'm doing. And he's like, okay, well, he's like, as long as you're sure, he's like, but I just want to say, prom isn't everything people say it is.
Oh my God.
I'm like, all right, well, I hear you, but I think I really need to find out for myself. Mm-mm. This is my only chance to go to prom, and I think that I'm gonna, try it out and find out for myself rather than trust, what you're saying to me. Yeah, it was just it's like you were saying, like nowadays, if a dean at a school tried to do that to a student, they'd be looking at a lawsuit. Oh, be like, big time. Sorry, but you're trying to discriminate, which is really what was happening. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, I mean, he didn't push it very much, but just the fact that I was called down to the office and, it was, at the time, though, I just thought it was funny. I thought it was so transparent, where he's like, oh, I happen to be looking through the tickets. I'm like, no, you weren't. Mm-hmm. Like, that's impossible. That you would,
impossible, ridiculous. Yeah, I think it was that like gentle naivete that we had. We just didn't see things with seriousness, even though it could have been criminal, it could have been violent, it could have been dangerous. We were just like, oh, people want to kill Brian at prom? Ha ha ha, let them try. Let's go. Oh, don't go to the bathroom by yourself, Brian. We're going to go in there too. Like, as if any of us are going to prevent somebody from fucking killing you. Let's all die. Yeah, we were pretty wild back then. We threw caution to the wind on a number of occasions. Remember the butter knife, of course? Again, like, what the fuck was I thinking, Could have easily killed us all because of that. Just dumb stuff. I think you were the voice behind that, weren't you? You were the voice that I was lip syncing to. It was you, right?
I forgot about that. Because you were facing the table, and I didn't know who you were talking to or what they looked like or anything. And you're like, okay, say blah blah blah, and then you just do it. These like 4 huge jocks show up at our table and show why.
And I'm still not even realizing the risk or danger associated yet. I'm still fucking going on and on and on.
And then didn't they call the police? And then the
Yeah.
police were like, you have a dangerous weapon. And we're like, come on, it's a butter knife.
Yeah, the only
Um,
dangerous weapon was our mouths, really. That's what the dangerous weapon was.
yeah.
Yeah. And we used to run them off, or at least I did. I used to run off my mouth. Uh, just love it. Just love it. Orland Mall. Oh my God, all the interactions at Orland Mall. Being a mall rat. I don't know. I think something about being a early 90s, Tinley Park, we had a thicker skin. I don't know. It, like I knew I would be tormented when I'd go to the mall. I knew it, but I didn't care, or I just accepted it, I guess. I just didn't question it. But I knew people were going to be bullying and whatever. But I would find my way to vent those frustrations by doing awful pranks in department stores or whatever it was,
Yeah.
balance it out. Incredible. I remember being at your apartment in Chicago, staying with you. Remember going to sleep on whatever couch, mattress, I don't know. But you saying, I go to sleep with music. Is that okay? I'm like, yeah, totally cool. I like to go to sleep with music. And then you go over to your 100 disc player. So 90s. And I'm like, whoa, what's that? And it's just like 100 fucking discs? And you're like, yeah. And it played like each disc. And that was so cutting edge. At the time,
I
I
do
didn't know
remember
anyone
that.
with that. Whatever happened to that? Is that a paperweight or in some like big landfill or something? Like,
I remember I sold. I had at some point I had two of them, or maybe like one 100 and 150 disc, and then I sold them before discs became completely obsolete. I think I sold them on Craigslist, uh, but it was like after people started digitizing their music. I still had it like into that period a little bit.
it's interesting
Yeah.
to be on either side of this kind of like, almost like dark ages compared to the way it is now, the way information is moved around so quickly and data and everything.
The
Um,
digital revolution.
yeah, it's really, is it easy for you to stay up to date, or are you like lost in the vernacular of the hip
Uh,
cats?
I think I'm fairly for I think for my age, I'm fairly connected. Um, I don't have a TikTok account. I don't have some of those other ones, but like I have a WhatsApp because like I I met some people in Singapore, and like most people in Singapore use WhatsApp, so I picked up WhatsApp, and so like I feel like I'm fairly native digitally, but like also I think I've been pulling back a little bit because honestly, part of the reason right now is that I don't have a desk in my apartment.
Yeah.
So my computer is like basically like a TV at this point. It's just up against the wall and we use it to watch TV, but I don't have a place to sit and interact with my computer. So I don't do as much as I used to. Like I used to do a lot more things like in the internet and like a lot more digital design and stuff like that, but I don't have a comfortable place to sit with my computer, so I don't. So I think like that's kind of separated me slightly from the digital world a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a weird thing because it's just a logistics thing, but like the way our apartment is set up, there's not really a good way for me to set up a workspace that's for my computer without buying like furniture and moving a lot of stuff around. And we don't own the apartment or the furniture, so if we got new furniture, we have to keep the old furniture because it's like the apartment building's furniture, weird stuff like that. So it's like we can't really change our apartment very much.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any? You said a lot of what you had as far as knickknacks have been lost over the years. Do you have anything from Victor J. Andrew that
Yeah, I have
survived the
some
storm?
stuff. Like, yeah, I have some things, and like I have like almost every note that I've ever written or like that I've received from other people. Like, you know, used to write notes in high school to each
Totally.
other. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure I have some from you, like at least a couple. I have a big box, like a medium-sized U-Haul box of just notes and like other things like that. But I haven't looked at it in years. I don't, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have some stuff like that. I mean, I have my Andrew yearbook, but I don't think I got a yearbook my senior year. I only got one my junior year. I think my senior year, I just used like a steno notebook and I wrote yearbook on it and I had everyone sign it. I don't know why I did that. I just like was anti-yearbook or something.
And you never got a class ring or anything, did you?
I did. You know what?
Did you?
I did, and I gave it to Jesse,
Oh.
and I can't remember if he gave it back or not, but I don't know what happened to it. Like, it was a point of contention between us for a little while because I thought that he kept it, and I think he at one point told me that he gave it back, and I don't know. We're friends on Facebook, and we chat every once in a while, but like, he lives in Chile.
Wow.
Yeah, he teaches at a university in Chile.
No kidding. You guys looked great that night with your matching tuxedos. Really. That was an amazing ensemble you guys had put together there.
Yeah.
I remember I wanted to go in a fully golden sequined tuxedo, but Jenny Pretzel, my date, she wouldn't allow it.
Yeah, but the picture we have with you in that hat and the fur.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, so of course. Yeah, the fur came from,
I mean,
can't remember her name at the moment, but yeah.
Was it?
She's so sweet too. What's her name?
From our school, was it Carol Bosey? Was it hers? No.
No. She was
Jenny Bunyan?
No. No, she what the hell was her name?
Was she in the photo?
She was there you remember how everybody slept over at my house the night before we flew to Florida? She was one of them. She was there at the airport to see me off. Blonde hair, really sweet.
I feel bad.
I do too. I feel terrible not remembering her name, but that's just because of a brain fart. Honestly, I have your name in my heart, but yeah, it was her fur. It was Jim Curtis's hat, and I was still in braces. I had my velvet tuxedo on, which was allowed by Jenny Pretzel. I was able to wear a velvet tux. Yeah.
So the weirdest things stick out in my mind, but I remember one day, I don't remember where we were or with who or anything. I just remember you eating pretzels, and you would be like, pretzel, pretzel, and she'd look, and you'd hold up a pretzel and say, I'm not talking to you, I'm not talking to you, and then you'd eat the pretzel, and then like a minute later you'd do it. I'm not talking to you.
Oh my God, I don't remember that at all, but it totally sounds like me. 100%. You know, honestly, I had like this evolution of like being that way, and then I peaked and I was like, I have to tone this down. This is too much, too much. So I softened my blow over the years, and now I'm far more respectful of people's deserving their dignity and integrity instead of being like this. I was such a mouth in the high school years. Just whatever came into my mind, blah, blah, like zero filter, zero, and that's what made me thrown out of class so very often. I couldn't stop it. But Germany has totally toned me down to the point where I'm like, am I extinct? Am I, like what happened? Like, can I even make a joke these days? I'm so rusty, Yeah, so I really enjoy these types of talks.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure what to expect. I don't really consider myself a conversationalist. Like, I don't really, I mean, I've spent most of my time alone lately,
Me too. Me too. Totally. Yeah, and then you know what it's like. You're supposed to motivate yourself because you're the luckiest guy in the world. You can do whatever you want. But it's like, where's the energy? Where's the
Yeah.
electric? Like, it's like a catch 22. Yeah, you have a space. Yes, you have the time, but you need the muse. You need that interaction. And
Yeah.
more often than not, my interaction on the street is the opposite of musing. It's like I say, "Hey, V Gates," and people like deliberately look away from me, deliberately ignore me, and then I'm like crushed, and I'm like, "Damn," you know.
Yeah.
And then on the opposite end of that spectrum, you have certain individuals who get excited that I might look colorful compared to the backdrop, right? And so then it's like I can't even walk in these shops anymore without having to do a song and a dance. Like, oh, he's the guy that sings. Sing us a song. Sing us a song. Okay, sing you a song. It's
That's
like
funny.
either one or the other. It's very hard to just like be like, hey, oh, all right, oh. And when it does
Yeah.
happen, it's not often with the German populace. It's with people like me who have, immigrated here from other countries. Those are my homies on the street. It's funny living abroad. It gives you a different perspective on the world. It gives you a different perspective on your home country, um, which often creates a little bit of disconnect between you and your old life because now you see it
Yeah.
differently than the people that are there still. And sometimes that doesn't work out so often when you talk about it.
Do you get to go home often? Have you been home much or?
Oh, well, every year, for sure, at least once. Before I got married and started a family, I would go more than once and make sure to visit the family and also New York or and also Athens or and also LA or whatever it was. But since I started the family, it's just Florida pretty much to visit the family. So I'm missing out
Yeah.
on that Joe sphere, if you will. And it's all
Hard.
good, you know. What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
But I do miss New York very much. Chicago, Jesus Christ. 15 years ago? I don't know, the last long time, man. Very long, too long. I would love to revisit there. I don't even know who I would contact though. Maybe Mike Mucci, maybe Nicole Webster. Um, but other than that, Dominic, I get shout out to Dominic.
Um, yeah. Yeah.
The funny thing about Dominic though is that our relationship is pretty much founded and fully experienced in Florida.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though he's from Chicago and I did live outside in the suburbs, blah blah. But yeah, I don't think I spent too much time with him in Illinois, except for the very memorable experience of being in his place and him making the best pizza I had ever tasted by hand. Still give him props for that. Yeah, those Florida visits, that was cool for a while there. I think maybe 2 years in a row I met you guys up in Orlando.
Was it twice? I thought it was only once, but it could have been twice.
I feel like it was more than once, but maybe it was only once.
We packed a lot in.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, man.
Yeah.
Again, it's a feeling. I don't know if I have really memories. Do you? Can you
Yeah.
remember
I
anything from
remember
that?
being there. I remember like. I mean, did you go to the parks with us at all, or did we just like hang out and drink at the house?
We did go to the parks. I forgot until you said that, but I think we went to Islands of Adventure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I remember. Uh, Maybe I don't
Mike,
remember.
Mike, Charles, Rick was there. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Or no, that wasn't with you. That was that was Disney with Jim Curtis and Tim. I remember how messed up that was. How Jim Curtis and Tim came to visit me in Florida the summer I moved, and I was under the impression that Harmony was my girlfriend.
Oh
uh,
wow.
and I'm there spending all this time with Tim and Jim, and pining on about how I miss Harmony, blah blah. And then after those two guys left, then I'm told, oh yeah, by the way, Tim's dating Harmony. I was like, oh, Pleasant. Thank you.
Wait, is it Tim Quirk?
Yeah, Cork. Yeah, yeah. So
Well, that's shitty.
yeah, it was pretty shitty. Yeah, it was pretty shitty, but naive again. Like to even
Yeah.
consider myself this person's boyfriend for whom I had only dated for maybe a couple weeks before leaving the state and only kissed. Now it's like a month, 2 months later, and I was like, yeah, you know, not much to hold on to, but yeah,
Yeah.
innocently enough.
That's how it is at that age.
Yeah, definitely. Trials and tribulations. You got a lot of ink on you, my friend.
Yeah, I've got a fair amount. It's been a long time though. I haven't gotten a new one in like 7 or 8 years,
Mm.
maybe longer.
What's the last one
I
you
used
got?
to. I think it's probably this. It says dignitas, which
What's
is
that?
a Latin term. It's like from ancient Roman culture. It's sort of like dignity, but it's more about like your own personal like your personal view of your own self worth. It's kind of a it's from a I read this series of books about ancient Rome, and I've been for the past like year or so I've been trying to design a board game that's set in ancient Rome. So and the working title is called Dignitas, so it's like kind of like related to that.
Oh, cool. You've always been a fan of words. I think a lot of you is that, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Like it was really interesting because before I moved to Andrew, I thought I was going to be a visual artist. Like, and when I moved to Andrew, I was disillusioned with art and I decided to reinvent myself and I focused super on words. So when I got to Andrew, I took a lot of like English classes, and then when I went to college, I majored in English, and I thought I was going to be a writer for a long time. And then right at the very end of being in school, I really missed making art, so I started a double major in studio art, and I didn't finish the double major because I just wanted to graduate. I'd already been in college for like 5.5 or 6 years. I'm like, I need to be done. So I didn't get my double major, but I continued to make visual art. And then the writing kind of fell to the side because, like, it was also difficult to find a job writing. And I really didn't want to do like something like write copy for a catalog or something like that, which I did for a little while, and it was just really boring and unsatisfying. So I haven't really done anything with words in a long time, and I don't, and like my visual art now that I make almost never has words in it. Although just very recently I've been making more with words,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know if it's going to be something I do a lot. I feel very out of practice in terms of writing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Every once in a while, I think maybe I'll go back and look at this thing that I was working on, but it's such a different muscle to do writing versus doing visual art, and um, you now of all time to do something because I have so much time. But I actually really don't like writing in my house. I like to write out at a cafe or something, and I don't know. So I haven't been doing much of anything lately. Like the game I was working on, I usually like to do outside, but then pandemic started and I couldn't really go out to cafes. Vietnam's pretty much open now, but I haven't been taking advantage of it, mostly because I don't really like the cafes that are around my house.
Mm-hmm. In the periphery, I've seen your work over the years, and a lot of it seems to be very geometric. Not necessarily what's behind your head, but I don't know if that is you or not. But what I've seen a
There's a
lot of
there's
is
a
like angles and shapes, and I don't know, maybe you can talk a little bit more about your work.
Yeah, so definitely my work over the last maybe 5 years has been very explicitly about geometry and related to geometric stuff. And it was just kind of like a natural progression from the work that I was doing before, which really didn't have a clear, I don't think, point of view per se. Like I was just trying lots of different things out. And I would say it's mostly been in the last 5 years that I've gotten more serious and like more, I don't know, deliberate in the kind of art that I make. And like, so everything's related back to geometry, and especially for the last 2 years, basically since I moved to Asia, I've been doing a single body of work, which is just about the same shape, reinterpreting it over and over again. So I've like, since April of, 2018, maybe? I guess that's when I started this project. Yeah, that sounds right. I'm now on like 488 of the same project, like 488 permutations of the same subject matter. And it's all kind of this geometric shape. And yeah, essentially it started with these line drawings that I was doing that in a lot of my older work, I'd use this design as like an element in another piece, like a background or just like a little component of another piece. And when I moved to China, I basically gave up a giant studio full of supplies and stuff, and I had to start from scratch. So I only had paper and pen, and so I had to teach myself how to draw, which I hadn't done in a really long time. And so I decided to explore this shape as its own subject matter, and it started out where I was just doing drawings, but then I started doing paintings, and like I didn't know how long it would last, but when I started, I definitely didn't think I'd do like almost 500. But even at where I'm at now, sometimes I think I'm getting close to an end, but at the same time, sometimes I think I could just keep going. I don't know. I just like prepared some collage work that I think is going to last me for at least like another 15 more pieces, which, you know, that's going to bring me almost to 500. And then I'm going to like decide if I'm going to keep going or not. But right now it seems like there's not really an end in sight. It seems like I really enjoy this, and it's really weird to realize that by making this constraint of a single subject matter, it's really the most freeing thing, because I reinterpret the same thing over and over again. And sometimes if I make just a subtle change in a previous piece, it feels like a new thing that's like really interesting. So I don't know. That's kind of, I've done, actually, if you look on my YouTube thing, I have a recording of an artist talk I did, which kind of goes into a lot of detail about how like my whole sort of art history from early drawing to like where I am now, basically where I was a year ago, but hasn't changed much in the last year. Which has like lots of slides and stuff. It was like a talk I did in Shanghai. But yeah, so that's kind of the gist of it without going into a whole artist talk.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I find it fascinating because it's so, you know, geometric, the stuff I've seen, which is, you know, very clean and sharp. And I thought, you know, maybe Brian's like a perfectionist. Maybe he's into like perfection, and he's just like eyeballing these pieces and just making them perfect. Is that like anything that
It's really not,
no?
It's really not the case. And actually, like, I mean, if you look closely at the work, there are a lot of imperfections, and I think that's what makes it interesting, is like finding those things. And I think that, you know, the work is lending itself to seeming perfect, which isn't really like my goal, but it is a side effect of just the nature of the work. But if you saw like the whole collection, I've made quite a few pieces that are like completely amorphous and like don't even refer to geometry except for like maybe a line or two. And like, so, um, there's kind of like, usually what I like to do most is like have something look really perfect mixed with something look totally chaotic and messed up. And that's like usually like my favorite thing to do. But there's a pretty wide breadth. But I would say more than anything, I'm not a perfectionist, but I've definitely grown in that direction just by working in this like really formulaic way. Um, that, but what's interesting is it doesn't impress me anymore when it's perfect. Like I just expect it to be perfect, and when it's not, then well, it's just rare that like I'll mess something up bad enough where there's like an obvious problem. Mm. You know, people often ask me how many pieces I throw out, and it's very, very few. Like very few. Like if I know what I'm going to do, I usually execute it, and it's pretty perfect. And a lot of times, if I do make a mistake, I lean into that mistake and discover a new. So actually, like I mean, and it happens less now, but earlier on, like the mistakes, the imperfections that like were really glaring, were the best opportunities for discovery of like new ways to deal with things. So, yeah, I mean, I would say perfection is almost the enemy of good art. You know, it's like if you make something exactly the way you intend it, you're not discovering anything. And like, so I really like when I work on something that I don't know what it's going to look like when I'm finished. Like I'm making something and like experimenting as I go. But you know, I work in both ways. Sometimes I know exactly what it's going to look like. Sometimes I start with a general idea, and in both of those cases, they don't always end up the way I think they will at the beginning. And usually, if they don't, it's better because I feel like a random discovery is like magical, whereas something that you expected is like just like okay.
Yeah, that's a great explanation.
Thanks.
Yeah, that piece behind you, is that from you?
Yeah. It's you could kind of see the shape. It's kind of it's the biggest one I've made, which is why it's hanging on the wall because I have nowhere to store it. It's not necessarily my favorite piece that I've made, but it's kind of like a combination of like really chaotic, organic, spontaneous stuff, and then the shape, which is really geometric and controlled. So it's pretty indicative of a lot of the pieces that I make, but it's I don't know. I would say it's not one of my like I definitely feel like I've made some better pieces. It's just like the biggest one.
It's great. I really like it.
Thanks.
A question for you about influence, because in the beginning of the podcast, I was saying how you very much influenced me. You had a certain style, a certain grace, a certain charm, and aesthetically as well. And I wonder who perhaps influenced you to become that person that I was influenced by.
That's a really interesting question. I mean, especially because, you know, it's so long ago to think about who was influencing me at that time. I would say, you know, when I moved to Tinley, my best friend was this guy, Mike Rosbicki, who we're still very in touch. Like, I mean, we don't talk every day, and it's the nature of our relationship has always been not very verbal. Like, we were in a band together, and we used to do everything together, basically, I'll just say. And he had a huge influence on me. I mentioned him in my artist talk because he was, when we were like in when we were in like 7th grade, I introduced him to comic books and particularly to drawing. And he was very good almost immediately at drawing. And it really intimidated me. And it kind of was one of the factors when I moved to Tinley to give up art, because I just felt like I'll never be good because it wasn't coming naturally to me, which was ended up being, I was wrong about that. And but that's another story. But anyway, I would say he's been like a big influence on me. And, this many years down the line, we are very different people, but we're still friends. But he's actually still an artist. He still makes art. So it's kind of an interesting thing because we're both like parallel in a lot of ways, but we're very different at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of like, were you also thinking of like celebrities or like just anyone?
Could be, yeah, anyone.
Yeah, it's really hard to think about that. I feel like I'm the kind of person who just kind of like absorbs the world on a very even level. Like nothing stands out as being better or worse than anything else. It's all just there, and I pick and choose and don't put a lot of like
Emphasis.
yeah, like a hierarchy on that kind of stuff. Um, and I mean, especially thinking of that time of like when we were at that age, I think I was like in such a weird place at that time. I was so in my own head at that time of my life. I remember I was really heavily writing in my journal a lot and like very introspective. So I think like I was constantly thinking about myself from my own perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, music was just a huge thing. I was so constantly listening to music, and like at that time, I remember James was one of my favorite bands, and I would like think about how the lyrics were affecting me. But I was like in two different worlds, or almost three different worlds. I like listened to punk music, but I also went to Off the Alley and like danced to industrial music. But then I also like Britpop, and they were very distinct, but somehow in my mind they all kind of bled together. So, and I think that's pretty indicative of who I am even now. Like I feel like I absorb a lot of different cultures in a way. Yeah, I mean, like I would say I'm pretty eclectic, and I don't know if I have a specific person that I know who is as eclectic as I am, but like I definitely feel like I get a lot of influence from a lot of different directions, but nothing overarching being like the main thing.
Yeah, I think that makes
That's weird.
sense.
I never thought about it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember in high school, you had these label stickers. They were round label stickers, blank white label stickers. And you had written the names of bands on them. I didn't see you do this, but I remember you being in high school with a sheet of these and you were giving them out. And I got one that had Lush on it. But now when I come to think of it, like, yeah, the music really wasn't from one particular genre or another. It was like punk, it was industrial, it was, you name it. And I mean, I absorbed what you were putting out there, which was this broad swath sampling of it all. And you were an influencer because, I mean, you're there handing out your homemade badges from bands that really have not much in common with one another. Here's Lush, here's Dead Kennedys, and here's Consolidated, or it was just, but yeah, that was the normal, that was that was normal. It wasn't something that was unique at the time. It was normal. But I think it is unique because most people kind of stick to one path and focus heavily on it and enjoy other things. But it seemed like the enjoyment was derived equally across the board from all these different, wildly different things. And even myself, unrelated to you, I mean, I remember going to Off the Alley and Jubilation. You remember Jubilation?
Yeah, I think I went to Jubilation like once.
I mean, absolutely nothing in common, but the same
Yeah,
amount of fun was had at both of these places.
yeah,
Jubilation was a old laser tag hall converted into like a techno club or something, house music maybe. I don't even
yeah,
know.
yeah. It was like kind of like pop. It was like pop music, right? Like, wasn't it like, I don't know who is popular, like Britney Spears or something? No,
It was more like
that's
it's
later.
time for the percolator. It's time for the
Yeah,
like shit like
yeah,
that, you
yeah,
know?
like B96.
B96, B. Yeah, oh my God, I haven't heard that in a long time. I remember going to the skate parties too. Roller skating was a big thing for kids back then. These roller
My,
skating parties.
when I was in seventh grade, I went every summer or every weekend of my summer. I went roller skating. I loved roller skating,
Oh, it was so
but
great.
it just ended. Eighth grade, I didn't go anymore.
Yeah,
That's when I got more heavily into skateboarding. So they
that's
didn't
so
really like.
funny. I've never known you as a skateboarder. Honestly, when you said that in the beginning, I thought, holy shit, that's the first time I've ever even pictured you as a skater or on a skateboard. The images that came to mind, I was like, I've never seen that in real life. I didn't even
Yeah,
know
I
that, I
guess
don't think.
seventh grade to sophomore year, I was like big skater. Like I would identify as a skater. Like
That's so funny.
we built a half pipe in my friend's, not a full pipe but a mini half, in my friend's backyard, and we were there every day, like skating in the backyard.
So it must have been really disappointing to discover that the skaters in high school were jerks. Like,
Yeah,
that's like a betrayal right there. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's a big reason why I basically stopped skating. I mean, like I didn't skate when I lived in Tinley.
Hmm.
There wasn't anyone to skate with.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Skaters in Tinley took on like almost a jock persona, like a bullying,
yeah,
jockish kind of persona. It was kind of weird. I mean, I
yeah,
thought like, why can't we be friends? I remember having that conflict with a few. No need to name names, but I always would wonder like when you're not harassing me, the way you're behaving is something that is funny and interesting. Like it seems like we have so much more in common than we don't. Like, what's the beef? But yeah, a lot of them were
yeah,
really just dicks. It's strange. I've never had that
yep.
experience with skaters after or before that. It was just the Tinley Park skaters. Some kind of virus.
Well, I hate to be ending things, but I think my husband's going to get home any minute, and I'll probably need to start living my life.
Yeah, man, it's been a slice of real delight catching back up with you. I hope to see you one day in person. You know, of course, if you ever roll through Germany, let me know, and maybe we can do this again on or off air. I just really enjoy you, Brian. I think the world of you.
Yeah,
I'm so happy you're
absolutely.
thriving, even though you're lonely out there in Vietnam. I'm lonely too, so fuck it, two tears in a bucket.
I was going to say, I have friends that just moved to Bern, Switzerland, which I think is not too far from where you live.
It's not
Um,
incredibly far. Can drive there probably like what, 8 hours or so, maybe 10
yeah,
hours.
yeah. I mean, it's close enough that if I'm there, I'll look you up for sure. You know, like,
Yeah, do
yeah.
that.
So, and they're supposed to be getting married next year, so I might be there for their wedding. You
Hmm.
know, depending on if travel is allowed. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll
Yeah.
have my fingers crossed and Daumen drücken, as they say in German. Yeah, they press their thumbs instead of crossing their fingers. And one day I'd like to meet
Uh,
your husband, of course, this guy who you love so very much and
yeah.
who loves you so very much. Must be a special dude. So, yeah, big shout out to this wonderful man that's in your life, and may you both have a most wonderful day together. Thanks for making time
Thank you.
for me and the viewers today. It's been awesome to have such a lively discussion in the lively part of my day, the morning. So, yeah,
Yeah, let's do it again, one way or another, and yeah, it'll be great.
totally. All right, brother man. Then do your thing. Stay positive and stay healthy and stay strong and stay strong with those beautiful locks of yours that sprout from your wonderful head full of mystery and intrigue. Till
Yeah.
next time.
All
Love you,
right.
dude.
Love you too. Bye bye.
Ciao, ciao.